All right, we back again, and today we're just talking about uh, how laws are going to be used to help some people, and so when you see laws shift, you have to be ready and be ready to know how you're going to benefit or how you're going to be able to uh, get through those laws too. And it takes a little bit of knowing, maybe knowing somebody who's working with those laws, creating those laws, and maybe just a little bit of assuming and guessing. But most of the time, if people make laws to benefit one group, that group isn't going to particularly tell other groups how they can benefit as well. They're going to try to make it benefit them. You saw the minority, the video I made about blacks. Are they a minority? The only people that do stuff like that is black people. Will tell everybody, this is what we're doing. This is how you can benefit better than us. And, have at it. Oh, by the way, if they try to take this benefit away that you're using more than we are, we're going to stand in lines and go fight and march up and down the street. You can sit in your nice, cool, air-conditioned office while we go out and fight so that you can use these laws or these things better than us, these benefits better than us, because you're a minority as well. So I broke all that foolishness and nonsense down in that video. But here I'm going to tell you something that I feel is imminent. I don't see any other way around it, and maybe someone else can, but I don't see it any way around it. And I believe that polygamy is going to be something that the federal government is going to allow a white man to engage in. That law is going to be overturned. And they have no other alternative but polygyny or polygamy, whichever one means that you can have more than one wife. Polygyny or polygamy. Yeah, I believe that's going to happen for white men. Well, it's going to be settled. It's going to be worded like you can have as many spouses as you want. But that's coming. That's coming. That is definitely coming down the pipe for white men. And why do I say this? Is in particular, and I say this because just with the negative birth rate and so many problems on the horizon as far as population wise, they apparently have. So why do I say that? Well, like I said, the negative birth rate and just a multitude of issues that are happening to them, that are just a product of the environment that they have been able to maintain for such a long time. Those products are eventually the product just of a European type of understanding. That type of understanding eventually, like Ross Perot said, it takes about 200 years or so, and the corruption is just going to go and set in, and it's going to be like, it's going to fold under itself. It's like the Romans, it's like the Greeks. It's going to fold within itself, and we're at that point in American history where the time is where white folks have been so successful for so long, but now the innate freedoms that they fight for, they also have to some of the things that they have to watch out for, some of their innate things that's involved with having all those freedoms. When you have a situation such as this one, those things can come back to haunt you, and that's what's going on there. Now, to make it even clearer, we're focusing on the negative birth rate. So the negative birth rate means there's not for every white death, there's not another live birth. So that means that there's not a match for every death, or a surplus, a positive, a surplus of live births for every death. There's a negative of live births for every death, which obviously means if we extrapolate that, at some point there's going to be where there's no live births. But I digress. That's not my intent. I'm just stating the facts. So anyway, when we look at it like that, we can see that they only have a certain amount of things that they can do to deal with it. Now, what happened? What happened? First of all, what happened? Now, we're not even talking about, the slavery thing and all that. We're not even talking about that. All we're talking about right now is the situation right now, the current situation right now. Forget that. We're talking about the current situation right now. What happened? Well, of course, slavery had to play the role into the thinking process that has evolved into where we are at today. Of course. But we're not talking about, this is your comeuppance, or this is the goose getting what the gander got, or whatever. We're not talking about that. All we're talking about is just the situation. But at this point in the game, certain things have happened to make it get to that point. So what was it that actually made it get to this point? Or what are some of the things that played major roles into why this happened? Now, I had to give it to the Ku Klux Klan. I had to give it to the White Knights. I had to give it to the citizens organizations, and all the white supremacy organizations that fought against what they call mud sharking or race mixing. I had to give it to them. They saw this coming. They actually saw this coming. Even Hitler saw this coming. And that's why they never wanted us to mix with them. I totally get that. I get that. When I say us, I'm talking about us non-Aryan people, non-Jew, non-Aryan people mixing with Aryans. I get that. And WASP, I get that. No, I get that. That makes solid sense to me. Very solid sense. I can appreciate that. And so they saw this coming. They saw this day was coming. And so that's why they fought it for so long. They fought having blacks and whites, especially, pretty much whites and anyone, but especially blacks and whites mixing, and not mixing. Well, when I say mixing, I mean not having sex, but having children. That's the key issue. They didn't mind having sex with you and all kind of different things that went with that, but they didn't want to have children because they know that those offspring are going to not be Caucasian, because you can only get a Caucasian person when one full Caucasian mixed with another full Caucasian. And that is getting to be a rare item today. But, however, so some of the things that have happened that those groups saw, and I'm not condoning the violence that they put out. I don't condone that, but I do understand the fact that they saw this coming, and they tried to put it off as long as they could. So I mentioned one thing that one of the things that talked about is mud sharking. What is mud sharking? Well, I've heard different definitions, but I'm going to just break down the basic definition is when a white person dates a black person. That is called mud sharking. That's where the white person makes a conscious decision to date a person that is black, whether it be man or female. But usually, typically, it's talking about the females. And so, the trend in that increasing is the trend in black men dating white women has really gone up, as far as, and the same with white men, not to the same degree with white men dating black women, because, well, let me back up, reverse that. Black men marrying or having children with white women is skyrocketing. White men dating and marrying black women is not rising as fast, but it is coming around. Now, there used to be an old saying, if your girlfriend can't use my brush, don't bring her home. In other words, if she had different hair than the mother, you're not supposed to bring her home. So that means if you're black and your girlfriend's not black, you shouldn't bring, and your mother's black, your girl shouldn't bring your girlfriend home. And if your mother's white and you're white, your girlfriend should be white, and so on, etc. Now, that has been cast out. In today's society, you can pretty much date legally who you want to date and have children and start a family with who you want to legally. However, there are adverse effects on a particular cultures for doing so. One adverse effect is, like we call this, well, not we, they being typically white men, call people who date white people who date black people mud sharks. And so what happens is, it used to be a hard and fast rule that only white women who were cast-offs and the worst of the worst were dating black men, or dating or marrying black men, even successful ones. But it's growing into a fad that white women are into black men. Now, I'm gonna tell you the real reason why so many white women are getting into white men. So many white women are getting into black men. That is because white men are really not interested in white women anymore. They're really not interested in them as the point that they were, because they have so many options. They can date black women, Latinos. Since they're at the top of the food chain, they finally realize, as a white man, I can date Latinos, I can date blacks, I can date Asians, I can date Hawaiians, I can date whoever I want to. And it's all good because I'm at the top. So with that understanding, they're able to date other races of women. And other races of women all look up to white men as the pinnacle of the dating pool. If a white man selects you to date and he has any type of success, you've arrived in society. Many times, I don't say all black women or all men and women of other races, but the ones of them that like to date white men. So, but like I said, because of the availability of other women, and let me tell you, there's one woman that's very dangerous and it is the Caucasian woman. She is the most dangerous. And let me tell you why she's the most dangerous, because she's the most knowledgeable of the laws. And the court are the most sympathetic to her. Meaning that if a sentence is passed against a white woman towards a white man, courts have proven that they are the most sympathetic to white women. So white men know that, and it has vastly come up with child support, alimony, and palimony. They have seen that has been an issue with them, and over the last, I would say, decade or so, they started realizing they've often start speaking in hushed circles to stay away from white women. If you're a successful white man, what are you doing with white women? So they starting to throw them back, all of them, any of them. And so we're starting to see that. So what's happening with that is now you have a surplus of white women out there. You have a surplus with white men that are not interested in them because they view them as very dangerous legally. They're very dangerous women who can create massive legal problems for you if you do one thing wrong. Say something wrong, you could get taken to court because you're being sexually, you touch them wrong, you can be sexually abusive, so on and so forth. They are the most knowledgeable of those laws, and the courts are the most sympathetic to them. So of course white men are trying to stay away from that. That is one reason why white men are just staying away from white women. They just staying away from them. So there is since there's not enough white men to go around, and there's definitely not enough white men, only a certain amount of white women can compete for the white men out there. Where are the rest of the white women going to go? Well, they have to spill over into the rest of the communities, Latino, Black, Asian, and so on and so forth. They have to spill over. And so, since they know they cannot compete at that level, they spill over. The ones that they feel that they can fare better, these other communities will spill over. That is the majority. There are some, like I said, there's always exceptions to the rule. There are some white people that are just attracted to black people, or attracted to Latinos, or attracted to, there's some people just right out of the gate, they're just attracted, but that's not the majority. The majority are spill-offs because they find dating, the competition is so high and they're not able to compete at that level. They need to go someplace else where they can compete they have a better chance of actually being successful. And so for a lot of them, that is the black community, because black men most of us have such a low self-esteem. We will take any woman that comes and just talks nice to us. We will just take them. Or same thing, but we think, wow, just because a person of another race is speaking to us, wow, I got super high game. When actuality, you already had a hook before you even got started, because you were black and that person was attracted to that energy that you have as a black person. But that's just to say, that's just an insight on my vision on how come there's so many white women in the black community, or are being dealt with on a more massive scale than in ever before in America. Besides the obvious, the laws changing. So white men are, like I said, white men are staying away from white women as a group. I mean, generally speaking, they used to be forced to marry. They had to marry their own. But those, the gatekeepers are being persecuted. Their gatekeepers are being persecuted for telling them to stay with their own race. So therefore, they're being silenced, and they're watching people out there have a good time. They, being white men, watching people out there have a good time with other races of people. And they're saying, hey man, and then they're stuck with white women. They're saying, I like to enjoy my life. I like to see things, do things, enjoy the world. Why don't I partake and enjoy the fruits of different races, and they're tasting and never going back. And that's having a dramatic effect on the birth rate as well. Another thing that's having an impact is homosexuality. White homosexuality. Black homosexuality, white people never really have a problem with that. As a matter of fact, it reinforces their dominance. So they never really have a problem with it, and they'll always typically support Black, Asian, and Latino homosexuality, supported in all different types of ways. The only time most white people have a problem with white homosexuality, because they understand from the Greeks and the Romans what happens when homosexual order becomes the number one order over the heterosexual order, and that's what happened to the Greeks and the Romans. Eventually it will erode any civilization, I don't care how great it is. And so they understand that. They understand that from the work of Saint Valentine. They understand that who would secretly marry men and women, back in the Roman times. So they understand that these things are detrimental to a positive birth rate. Another thing is that has affected, when I want to say homosexuality is, first of all, let me say this before I close on homosexuality. I'm not saying it's a good or a bad thing. I'm just saying it is going to have an effect on the birth rate. Homosexuality will have an effect on the birth rate. That is mathematically a fact. And so whether you think it's good or not, it's irrelevant whether you think it's good or not. We're just talking about things that have an effect on the birth rate that has been happening. White homosexuality at this point. Pedophilia. White pedophilia. That is another problem that they have. That is creating major issues for the white community and the white birth rate. And what pedophilia is a deviation, is a sexual encounter, and it's a deviation from a grown man and two grown adults agreeing to do something sexual. It's a deviation from that. It's a further deviation from that point to where now it's a grown person and a child agreeing to have sex, when a child by law is not able to agree to have sex, therefore by their being raped, even if they are in submission to it or carry out acts as being instructed. But because they have, and if the problem is here, most of the pedophiles in the Caucasian society are married or in relationships, and they are carry out these instead of procreating. They need to be able to. They want to have sexual contact, but they do not want to produce children. They don't want to even have come into the chance of creating children. So instead they will create different ways or deviations to have sexual contact. And one of them, if someone's not fertile because they're too young to be fertile, or they're of a different, they're too young to be fertile, and at the same time do not have the necessary organs to become fertile because they're of the same of the same gender, then, but just young or a child, then that to them is what is going on, and that to them is okay in the pedophile's mind. Now, this is not to say there's no black pedophiles or Latino pedophiles or Asian pedophiles. There's pedophiles of all races. Pedophilia is something that needs to be stamped out no matter the color or anything. But it is having this pedophilia, and so they have to live in hiding. So this is that's the masked killer there. And so therefore they cannot reach out to this person, the pedophile, and say to this pedophile, we need you to stop doing that. If you're going to get involved in sexual activity, you need to get involved with your wife. But see, you can't reach out to the pedophile because of the inherent nature they must hide. So, pedophilia, white pedophilia, is destroying the birth rate. It's causing this birth rate to be less than zero and in the negative. Just one of things. Another thing is feminism. And this is what I was going to bring up when I was talking about white women. Feminism in relationship to white women, the laws and the attitudes of white women have in them, their empowerment of white women and how they've gotten stronger, and laws have made them similar as not as powerful, but more powerful than they've ever been. They also have ability to do things that men did in the past. So they can wait longer now to start families. However, with the feminism having them wait longer to start families, what's the problem that is having is that women only have a certain amount of time before men look at them as not unavailable for having a family. Men will never look at you as not being worthy of sex unless you let yourself go. They may look at you as being worthy of having sex, but they, at a certain point, are not going to look at you as worthy of or ready to have a family. Because you'll get to a certain age and a man will say, you're too old to have a family. That doesn't happen for men, but it does happen for women. So, but feminism doesn't relay that information. They tell you that that's not fair, but they don't have they're only dealing with that is to get a younger man that's foolish enough to do something like that, to get involved with something like that. These are all my opinions. If you have a different opinion, please let me know. These are opinions based on my knowledge. So feminism has definitely hurt the white birth rate. Lesbianism, white lesbianism, and white lesbian mudsharking, that has hurt the white birth rate. It has hurt the white birth rate. Because the lesbians are really just field day for them out there. White lesbians feel that never been a better time to be a white lesbian. Never, ever, 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 ever. I don't think it's ever been. I don't even think it's better. I think it's not even that good of a time to be a white gay man. It's not even a good a time. I think maybe in the Roman era or the Greek era was probably the only better time to be a white gay man. But in today's world, who's got the easy pickings? White lesbians have the easy pickings, man. They can just pick them off anywhere, anytime. They got the easy pickings, in my opinion. So white lesbianism has also been something that has led to that has led to the negative birth rate of the Caucasian. The MGTOW movement where they say, hey, I don't want no children. Those guys who say, wrap it up, those guys, they have, talk about a dent. They have put a crater in the white birth rate. And not to say anybody's wrong, just stating the facts about what's happened. Those guys are not leaving a trace, right? Right? So they're not leaving a drop or a trace. So since they're not doing that, there's nothing there's nothing because they have their careers. They're focused on their careers. They're focused on getting their financial houses in order, and which they should be. But all of these things, what I'm saying is, a commingling of all of these things coming together all at one time the pressure is there, has pushed the needle to the zero and passed the zero the other way as far as the birth rate is concerned. So the MGTOW guys have definitely, the white MGTOW guys have definitely said no to the babies, no to, and so, and I know that a lot of these white supremacy groups saw all of this coming and tried to stop it, but it was inevitable that it was going to come about. Just because some of them are warring factions. Like MGTOW was just a response to feminism. It's just a response. So some of these things are just responses to the other side. Anyway, another thing is abortion. Now we all know Margaret Sanger made abortion because she, as a white supremacist, following the teachings of Adolf Hitler, and I don't want to say Marx, but maybe Marx, or maybe what's the guy after Marx? Lenin. She came into the understanding that if you have a different group among you that's breeding at a faster rate, you need to do something about that. You got to either exterminate them or you're going to have to do something. So she came up with Margaret Sanger came up with a system by which they would abort children of unwed parents. And it eventually, like I said, it was a cleansing mechanism to actually, yes, it was a way to sterilize. That's the word I was looking for. It was a way to sterilize the black community in particular, but also the Latino community and the Asian community as well. It was never intended to fall into the hands of have the availability for white women. It was never intended for that. But what happened was the feminists got a hold to it and found out about it and started arguing for the right to have it and the benefits it would have on them being able to reach the pinnacle of success in their careers. So that's what happened. Well, we know that abortion in the white community has skyrocketed, mainly because not really skyrocketed, but not really because they're having more sex in the white community. It's not. I think they're pretty much having the same amount of sex or less. It's just that the women are wanting to start their careers. And so rather than have a child and start their career, they're just aborting the babies and getting their career going and then getting started with their families after they get married and settle down and on and on and on. But abortion was never meant for white people. It was never meant for them. But legalized abortion was never meant for them. But anyway, but that has been a contributing factor because of the feminist movement. White women said, hey, they've realized that men were making more money, not because they're getting paid more money. They're on the job longer. They can stay longer, where women have to get off of work early, go home, feed the children. The man doesn't do that. The man stays home. Let the woman go home and feed the children. He stays at work till 9 o'clock at night. So they want to be able to stay at work till 9 o'clock at night. So they can't do that when they're having a baby. They have to have an abortion so that they can stay at home. They can compete for these jobs, and on and so forth. So abortion became a regular tool for them, which is what it is today. So I think we could see that all of these things, now we have the situation where all of these factors are working against each other all at the same time. And it has produced the negative birth rate that we have today for a Caucasian. So, soon the government will have to get involved. Soon, the government will have to get involved and make a special law that says, as a white person, you can have more than one spouse. It's going to happen. It's going to have to happen. It may not happen for the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. It is definitely going to happen when the birth rate gets to a certain level. That is just going to have to be what happens. The legislation is going to get right now. They have to prove the case, and it's going to take them a few years to prove the case, because the white woman right now is not going to let them push something like that publicly. And they got to figure a way to not let everybody else do it. So when they figure that part out, how to not have you go out and get 4 or 5 wives, then they will introduce this legislation, and you will have to see that it's the only way they're going to be able to kind of correct this situation, because all of these things are just problems that are going to keep escalating and escalating and escalating and escalating. So the question becomes, in this time of turmoil for white folks, what are you doing for yourself? Are you going to sit around and blame white people and say, well, white people are the reason why this is that? No. White people are not holding you back from nothing. It is your ignorance of the understanding of how things work that is holding you back. Yes, they're going to do the things that they're going to do, but that's because they have a knowledge of how these things work. And then you have a knowledge of how these things work. You can go to a law library and read all about it. You got access to do everything. So me and you, so we choosing to get stuck on stupid on these TV shows instead of going out there and actually educating ourselves. What we're going to have to do in that situation, in that time when that happens, is follow the legislation, the writers that go with that legislation, and see, okay, what other benefits are there going to be, and what benefits can we take advantage of to clean our community up, right? Or what writers can we put on that legislation so that we can have it for just us? That's why you got to watch when that legislation comes out. Watch. That way you can quickly, you'll be able to identify stuff that hey, you know what? If you're going to let just only white men marry more than one woman, okay, that's fine with me. That's no problem for me. What you need to, what we got to have here is have a system where only black people can get this money, and we can only spend it with each other. You can only spend it in a verified black business that has black employees and circulates that money in the community. You figure that out, and then let us figure this out, and then go ahead and pass it so we can get our community back together. That's all I'm saying. Don't hang your hat on anyone else. You still work to improve your community regardless to what happens in the white community. That's not, hope the best for them, good for them, good luck for them. But as far as us, we cannot say, well, we're going to sit back and wait until that legislation comes. No, we're going to keep working. You keep working, do whatever you're doing that's trying to help, but you just got to keep your eye open for when that legislation does hit. You go to your representatives that you voted for and you go to them and say, okay, well, you need to put this rider in there with that, because we want to be able to have something just for us so that we can clean our community up as well. Watch out for that. That's all I'm saying. Always be able to know what you can do. If somebody wants something done for them specifically, what you're going to have done for yourself specifically to help yourself. That's all I'm saying. Nothing wrong with that. That's the American way. Peace.